Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, and today, thanks to an early access key from Creative Assembly, we're taking a look at the Chaos Dwarfs in Total War Warhammer 3. If you're interested in grabbing the DLC for yourself, you can use the link in the description and pinned comment down below to support the channel as you buy it. And though I'm hoping to get a review out before the DLC releases, today's video focuses on some of the key features you'll need to master if you want to reign supreme as the Tower of Zharr. If you enjoy this video, don't hesitate to hit the like button, and now, without further ado and with timestamps down below, let's begin. The Chaos Dwarf economy. The economy here is a lot more involved than usual, with a few moving parts that serve their own purpose, but are at least at times interconnected. The elements you need to keep your eyes on include the familiar treasury, the labor economy, raw materials, and armaments. Conclave influence is a kind of resource too, but we'll discuss that separately later in this video. Treasury is the most familiar of the lot. You use it to recruit most units and build and upgrade most buildings, and it comes in handy when trading for other resources too. You make money through all the usual means here, from buildings in your settlements to battle results, raiding, etc., but you can also bolster it through the use of the other resources and the appropriate tools to go with them, as we'll discuss shortly. The labor economy is active right from the start of the campaign, with so-called laborers being brought in with each victory in battle, through the conquest of settlements, through events, and through trade alike. But you won't be able to open this menu until you have at least one settlement in a second province. This screen allows you to manage the spread of your slaves across all of your provinces, and while you can select settlements in individual provinces and get access to some of the same actions, this screen gives a much better overview of the situation across your entire empire. You can check this box to make sure new laborers are brought to this province when acquired, since anytime you do gain laborers through battle, settlement capture, or trade, the number of laborers are spread evenly across all provinces that are accepting new intake. You can see the total number of laborers currently active in a province as compared to the minimum number required to keep things operating with maximum efficiency. And you can see up here the average efficiency of your workforce across your empire. The workload of a province is determined by the buildings within, translating pretty directly into more raw material output. The higher the workload, the more the province is putting out, as long as it's operating at full efficiency. Be wary though, as a large labor force will have a negative impact on control in that province. You can redistribute your laborers as needed through this column here, using money from your treasury to do so, but keep in mind that a portion of your province's labor is lost per turn, at least partly determined by the current control level of the province. At a minimum, 5 laborers are lost per turn, even when control is maxed out, where typically 3% of labor is lost per turn. At the lowest level of control, you lose 20% of laborers per turn. You can see how managing laborers isn't just a matter of securing efficiency, but in the early game, it's also a matter of minimizing loss by shifting laborers away from where control is low, and you're losing up to 20% of your workforce per turn. Remember to actually redistribute your laborers though. Don't just pull them away from one province and leave them as a surplus. If you do so, you won't be able to save your changes and get out of this window. Before we do leave this window though, there's one more use of labor that needs to be highlighted, as shown over here. At the cost of labor, you can generate conclave influence, which we'll detail in a moment. You can generate a small boost to your treasury, or you can improve control over a prolonged period of time. Only one of these three can be active at a time, and they can be tremendously valuable when you find yourself in a tight spot. But remember that performing any one will take away from the labor pool in that province and might set you back as far as efficiency is concerned too. When looking at an individual province, you can see all these actions as well as your total labor in the region, the workload, the output, and associated efficiency too. But apart from all that, you can take advantage of the one final use for laborers, where any building under construction can be rushed to immediate completion at the click of a button, sacrificing 100 laborers per turn remaining on the construction. This can be tremendously helpful in repairing an ailing economy, building defenses where urgently needed, or acquiring buildings that can bolster the capabilities of a newly acquired settlement or army. Moving on from labor, let's look at what they're primarily used for. Raw materials. Raw materials can be acquired through trade and the raising of cities, and they can be generated by the landmark drill forgecraft buildings, but they are primarily sourced through mines in your outposts. When capturing a miner settlement, you'll have the option to occupy them as either outposts or factories, and for raw materials, you'll want the former, though you should keep in mind that it provides significantly fewer recruitment options than the latter. With that said, you can always switch between the two types at a later stage at the cost of reducing the settlement down to Tier 1 and destroying all of its buildings, needing to start from the ground up. But I digress. The mine building chains at your outposts will increase raw material production for your empire, but you should keep in mind that any building that increases raw material production will also increase the workload in that province, whether this building is a mine, a quarry, or something else entirely. It's important to do some math here and make sure that you can actually afford the upgrades you're pursuing, and that the potential hit to efficiency is either overcome by the increase in output or by the fact that you're just about to acquire additional laborers that'll fill that gap. Raw materials can be exported, but within your empire, they're used for two things. First is construction. Raw materials are needed to build infrastructure buildings at factories and provincial capitals, and they're also needed to upgrade the settlement buildings at factories and provincial capitals too. And finally, you need raw materials to unlock certain technologies. Your choice of construction in a factory will bolster the production of one of the key resources outside of laborers, while your choice of construction at a provincial capital can improve recruitment ranks and replenishment, bolster the generation of wealth, improve control, campaign movement range and upkeep costs, reduce raw material consumption for buildings in the province, and finally, improve political and magical prowess. Note that the provincial capital's infrastructure buildings ask only for a one-time investment in raw materials, while 2 out of the 3 factory building chains ask for a one-time investment alongside a per-turn investment as well. Don't ignore this per-turn number, as you'll quickly find yourself without raw materials, and without raw materials, you won't produce any armaments. Armaments are acquired through trade and through factory production, with the assembly line building chain consuming more and more raw materials to produce more and more armaments per turn, as long as raw materials are available to use. Armaments are essential to the Chaos Dwarf way of life and are needed for the construction of advanced military buildings at factory settlements and provincial capitals alike, giving access to higher tier units and additional benefits beyond. Armaments are also needed to unlock certain technologies, and that's not all. Armaments are the resource that keep your armies growing and the Hellforge running. The Hellforge. The Hellforge is a pretty interesting mechanic that the Chaos Dwarfs rely on to build their strength and overcome their enemies in spectacular fashion. Relying entirely on armaments to function, you have decisions here that are a one-time cost and others that will drain a certain number of armaments per turn. The primary use of the Hellforge is in the armory, where you spend armaments to increase the number of units of a specific type you can actually field across your empire. This, as you can imagine, can be a bit of a bottleneck early on, especially as you get a second army out there, since even the most basic units are limited by your work or lack thereof at the armory. Sure, you can have armies entirely made up of hobgoblins and goblin and orc laborers, but some of the juiciest tools are harder to come by. With each increase in unit cap, the cost of the next step goes up incrementally, but apart from giving access to more recruits for use, there's an added impact to these increased unit caps. Units are grouped into categories, and increases to the individual units' unit caps will slowly fill the bar to the left of the category they're in. As this bar fills up and crosses specific thresholds, you'll unlock more and more powerful upgrades that you can apply at the manufactory. At times, you'll pursue increases in unit caps simply to field more units, but at other times, you might want to pursue a particularly interesting manufactory upgrade before switching focus elsewhere. As you can see, these thresholds are typically at 1 above the starting unit cap for the category, followed by another 2 above that, and then some are in steps of 2 each, while others are in steps of 3 each, for a total of 5 thresholds for each category. Not every step is equal though. Some unlock a single upgrade for use in the manufactory, while others unlock a couple, and some of these upgrades are quite powerful. Physical resistance for melee troops, suppressive fire for blunderbusses and fireglaves, added barriers for various units. There are some game-changing upgrades here well worth pursuing, but be warned, you can only have a few upgrades active at a time, and each upgrade has an associated per-turn upkeep cost that is multiplied by the number of active units of that category you have spread across your entire empire. As you can see, this can get quite expensive quite fast, and you'll want to make sure your factories are producing armaments at a decent rate before you pile on some of the more expensive upgrades for your massive armies. Keep in mind also that each category of unit can be upgraded and adjusted separately, but when an upgrade is confirmed, that category cannot be tinkered with for at least a few turns. Once that cooldown is over though, you can go right back in and make adjustments, including the removal of old upgrades you no longer deem worth keeping. All these upgrades, especially the ones with upkeep costs, can be a serious strain on your economy. So let's talk about military convoys. This will seem quite familiar to anybody who has played as Cathay in the base game, but it works marginally differently here, so I figure it's worth including. You'll spend money from your treasury to buy convoys, armies consisting of a leader who can gain skill points over time alongside a bunch of units that can grow and shrink in number due to battles or events alike, just like with Cathay. Then, you'll tell the convoy where to go, making a call based on the number of turns the round trip will take, and perhaps more importantly, the type and amount of resources you're looking for, and what you have to offer. Every handful of turns, the resources on offer that you in turn have to export will change per location, so keep an eye on this screen for good opportunities to get what you need from nearby. Either way, when you select a destination, you can adjust the amount of the resource you're sending, though of course, the amount you receive in return will change accordingly too. I think that's pretty par for the course as far as trade is concerned. As with Cathay's system, some routes are more dangerous than others, many will have events en route, and sometimes you'll have to engage in battles, either auto-resolving or fighting them yourself as you see fit. There isn't really anything too wildly different here from the base game, but again, when you find yourself in desperate need of laborers, raw materials, armament, or money, your military convoys can be relatively quick in terms of a solution. And now, for something completely different. The Tower of Zharr. The Tower of Zharr isn't available for use right from the beginning, but as soon as you secure 75 Conclave influence, you'll be able to open this screen up and start spending that influence for some great buffs to your empire. Events, settlement buildings, buildings like the Temple of Hashut, and missions can all provide Conclave influence, as can the sacrifice of laborers as described earlier in this video. Conclave influence can be used to unlock certain technologies too, but for the time being, let's focus on the Tower of Zharr specifically. As you can see, the tower is divided into 4 tiers, and each tier has 3 segments, or districts. The number of seats in each district is inversely proportional to the tier number. In other words, each district in Tier 1 has 4 seats, while each district in Tier 4 has 1 seat. Unlocking all the seats in a single district will provide an additional buff for all Chaos Dwarf factions, and these can be anything from slightly increased research rates to immediately causing wall breaches during a siege. No laughing matter, and quite a game changer, truth be told. What's more though, a higher tier cannot be unlocked until 2 districts in the prior tier are filled up, so make sure you weigh the buffs each seat gives you, as well as the buff each completed district gives you, as you decide what to occupy and in what order. The higher tier seats get extremely powerful on their own, adding army abilities, speeding up construction, bolstering the economy, or, right at the top, forcing confederations. Naturally, these seats get more expensive with every tier, from 75 apiece to 150 apiece to 300 each, and finally, 600 each. Keep in mind that other Chaos Dwarf factions will claim these seats too, but 5 turns after a claim is made, they can be usurped for a slightly higher cost than usual. This means the seats that provide the most powerful buff to the faction that claims them might end up hotly contested, leaving the district buffs that apply to all Chaos Dwarf factions unclaimed. You might want to consider accepting a weaker individual seat if it means unlocking a valuable faction-wide district buff. Plan your approach as you see fit. The only outlier to this usurping are the seats at the topmost tier. These cannot be usurped, so try to get there faster by maximizing your Conclave influence by the time this tier is unlocked. But that's enough about empire management. Let's turn our attention to the Chaos Dwarfs in battle. There are a few noteworthy aspects that are worth highlighting with regards to the Chaos Dwarfs on the battlefield. Contempt and Malign Authority are first among them. This pair of unit traits is applied based on a unit either being a Chaos Dwarf with Contempt, or being a Goblin, Orc, or Hobgoblin with Malign Authority instead. Contempt on its own doesn't mean much. A unit with Contempt won't have its morale impacted by routing units unless they also have Contempt. Where Contempt becomes valuable, though, is when there are units with Malign Authority nearby, who gain a +8 to their leadership as long as somebody with Contempt is within 55 meters distance. This might not sound significant, but it can actually help hold the line where it might otherwise have faltered. Apart from this pairing, you'll notice the Chaos Dwarfs have quite a few units that either start with or can be upgraded to get the Hellforged trait. This means a Demon Smith can target them with the Reforge ability to replenish their hit points. Finally, you'll see quite a few different tools at your disposal for the purpose of controlling your enemy's speed. The Granite Guard have suppressive fire, as does the Iron Demon, and the Iron Demon with the Dreadquake Mortar, and the Dreadquake Mortar on its own has monstrous impact, as does the Skullcracker with the Dreadquake Mortar too. Ogla Khan's Wolf Boys have the Pelt of Wolfag to slow down routing or broken enemy units, making them easier to finish off, and the Ash Storm spell in the lore of Hashut slows enemies down while also giving them a weakness to fire. Being relatively slow themselves, having control over the enemy's pace can make quite a difference on the battlefield, especially if you have a healthy gun line waiting to open fire on an incoming enemy charge. This can also help you reorient yourself for incoming flanking maneuvers or otherwise get away from dangerous situations. Controlling the pace of the battlefield can make a very big difference in a variety of ways. There you have it, folks, a short crash course on the Chaos Dwarfs. If you're interested in watching a Let's Play ahead of release, I'll be kicking one off on the channel tomorrow, so you might want to subscribe for that and more strategy gaming reviews, previews, Let's Plays, and more. If you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to leave a like and a comment down below, and again, if you'd like to grab the DLC for yourself, use the link in the description and pinned comment down below to support the channel as you buy. As always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big ol' thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.